A couple decades ago, you would go to the cinema to see a new movie that just came out. You would get your popcorn and your drinks and find your seat and enjoy this brand new movie that just came out. And it was the best experience ever. And then streaming came along, and cinemas went down. Now, even some movies, even though they release in cinemas, release to streaming platforms on the same day. So why would you drive to a cinema, buy popcorn and drinks and all these different things, which cost more money, when you can just sit in the comfort of your home and watch this new movie that was just released? Now, fast forward to today, social media has become a huge phenomenon. The younger generation and even some older people are always scrolling on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, whatever it may be. Influencers on these social media platforms influence and impact this generation, whether in a positive or a negative sense. They impact the way this generation thinks, acts, treats others, and goes about their day-to-day life. Some of these influencers are very good. Some of them are educational, and some of them are just mere brain rot or entertainment. Now, you've probably heard these different interviews with these influencers about their thumbnail ideas, their video creation process, their creative process, the business side, and everything else. But something that hasn't been told a lot is the fact that all of these influencers, or at least the majority of them, have a manager who runs the day-to-day business aspect of their channel, makes sure all the video editors and videographers and talents are in line and on the same page, making sure the analytics and the data is all correct, making sure we're coming up with good ideas and everything else like that. But not many of these managers are asked about the process. Because why would you ask them when you can just ask the YouTuber or influencer who has a face and therefore will be more popular than this manager? Now, on today's episode of Creator Corner, I had the pleasure of interviewing Zach Blank. And at first glance, you may have no clue who that is. But Zach Blank is the manager behind Nick DiGiovanni, who is one of the most subscribed food YouTube channels on YouTube. And Nick is one of the people that is making a positive impact to people who watch his content around the world. In today's episode of Creator Corner, I discussed with Zach the video ideation process behind Nick's channel, how they are elevating and expanding the brand, what a day-to-day life looks like running the Nick DiGiovanni business, and so much more. I think you're going to enjoy this interview. I know I did. It is more of a niche type of content and not the same subject as some of my other podcast interviews have been, but I think you're going to enjoy it. I know I did. So if you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to like the video, comment down below, share it, and subscribe. Or if you're listening on Spotify, be sure to give us a 5-star rating there and share it there as well. Or if you want to go further, you can check out what we've got over on patreon.com/creatorcornerpod, or just watching the podcast and liking, sharing, and subscribing helps out a ton. I read all of your comments. I reply to a lot of them. So thank you for watching. And now enjoy this interview with Zach Blank, the man building the brand behind Nick DiGiovanni. Did you know that 60% of consumers avoid brands with unattractive logos even if they have good reviews? Well, Resurrection Design Co. helps kingdom-minded businesses fix that problem with award-winning brand and web design. And right now, they are offering a free, I repeat, free website design or redesign to the first 2 podcast listeners who sign up for a brand identity package. When signing up for a brand identity package, Resurrection will help you design your brand's visual and verbal identity so that you attract your ideal customers, differentiate yourself from your competitors, and strengthen your credibility in the market. Now, this offer is only valid for the first 2 people who sign up this month, so don't wait to visit resurrectiondesign.co/creator-corner to claim it. The link is also in the description. RDC has a 100% client satisfaction and a 5 out of 5 Google rating. So don't wait to snag this deal. Head to resurrectiondesign.co/creator-corner or visit the link in the description. Zach Blank, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Elijah. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. So I do a little short intro at the beginning of the podcast usually. And so I mentioned to the audience that I'm, very excited for this because we hear all of these different interviews with the YouTubers from, whether it's John Yeshuai or Colin and Samir, and they talk about these different things, but we never really hear from the managers who kind of run the business day to day. So that's, why I'm very excited to get some insight into the managers of the YouTubers.
Yeah, totally, man. I'm someone who could talk about YouTube all day, every day. It's all I think about. It's all I've done for the past 4 years or so. So excited to get to chat with you about it.
Yeah, awesome. So you are the manager for Nick DiGiovanni, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yeah,
it's always been hit or miss.
Nick DiGiovanni. It's a tough one.
Yeah. So you're his manager, and he is one of the biggest food YouTube channels on YouTube, and has, businesses and all this other stuff, and has quite an interesting story from his, Master Chef and then to starting YouTube to now getting these huge brand deals and everything. So why don't we start off with a bit of how you started with Nick and kind of what you did before that?
Yeah, of course. So my backstory is kind of all about food. When I was a kid, food was always really my number one passion throughout my life, starting when I was a little kid. So when I was even in like elementary school, like kindergarten, first grade, for some reason I became really interested in the Food Network. And instead of like cartoons, really all I wanted to watch on TV when I got home from school was the Food Network. My mom was also a great cook, so I would kind of help her in the kitchen, and then I would learn to cook more dishes from Food Network. And it was kind of a cycle of like cooking and learning about food all from a super young age. So that was all really exciting to me. As I got older, I started to become really interested in entrepreneurship and business. It was something as I started learning about startups and I watched shows like Shark Tank, even like I started to get into this like entrepreneurial mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. And then once I got to high school, my passions for food always kind of stayed the same. So when I was thinking about careers and internships and jobs, really the number one thing that I was attracted to was something that could merge food and business. Was kind of like my grand goal, was like do something that combines the two, which were my two biggest passions. At the time in high school, I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area. When I was in ninth grade, I kind of just wanted to see what I could do and get my start in this world. So I reached out to a bunch of local catering companies and restaurant groups and food chains, and really just reached out to anybody to see what they would let a high schooler do in food and marketing. Whether it was like spreadsheets or whatever, just anything that someone would let me do. So I ended up getting a few internships and kind of got some simple baseline experience, started to grow that up from there, into just like bigger and bigger companies in the food and business space. Flash forward to college, and the last thing I did for Nick before I started working for Nick was I interned at Shake Shack on the marketing team. And that was really cool for me to go from seeing these like local restaurant groups, catering companies to now going to this huge, massive, publicly traded company.
Mm-hmm.
So that was exciting to kind of like work my way up in the food business marketing type of sector. This was also around early 2021, which was kind of when I first started seeing Nick pop up on my social media. As someone for me who grew up loving the Food Network and chefs like Bobby Flay and Alton Brown and these people who were super popular on the Food Network at the time, I kind of realized throughout my childhood and early adulthood that all those people kind of became less relevant as TV kind of declined for my age group and as social media kind of increased. So Nick was someone who I started seeing kind of right in that early TikTok boom of content creators. I honestly was just pretty instantly so impressed and interested in what Nick was doing I started watching him on Instagram and then followed him everywhere, watched all his YouTube videos, did the whole thing. As I also researched more about Nick, I learned that he went to Harvard. He had all these businesses, that he was a super interesting guy. So basically what I did was I sent Nick a cold email one day and I kind of pitched him the same thing I'd always done, which was I asked him, I told him about my background. I told him I'd love to, that my passion is food and business. I'd love to help him build his brand, do this and that, whatever. Um, I had to push Nick. I had to pester him a few times with a few more emails. Eventually he responded.
Hmm.
Um, and we started out just on a few small projects. So really it was whatever he needed help with. I don't even think I was getting paid at the time because I didn't ask to be paid. Um, and then Nick at the time was someone who didn't really have much of a team at all. So I was kind of his first team member. And I would just help him really wherever he needed help. And then it kind of expanded more and more from there until today it's become this like really tight partnership where I've kind of helped him grow all parts of the business. So yeah, it's been exciting and a journey of a lot of food and a lot of
Hmm.
different cold emails.
Awesome. So when did you realize that, you were saying before we hit record that you're very fascinated with YouTube and growing YouTube and talk about that all day. So when did
Yep.
you realize that, you know, oh, helping grow a YouTube channel would be really fun?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a good question because before I started working for Nick, I had no interest in YouTube or video production or anything. Like some of my friends now grew up like making YouTube videos when they were 10 years old or editing videos since they were super young or making home movies or whatever. Like that was never me. I was never someone who was super interested in kind of like making videos. Really, it almost happened kind of like, serendipitously, I'd say, where like the first thing Nick really needed help with was kind of just helping to facilitate his YouTube videos. So like he was making videos like at the time he was doing a lot of videos where he was like going around to rate different fast food restaurants. Um, and he even needed help with simple things like making a route for different fast food restaurants to go to. And these were some of the first things I did on YouTube was just kind of help him plan out his videos. Eventually I think he gave me access to the back end of YouTube to help like, check the data on something. Eventually I started just kind of get it, like, I've always been interested in data. So I started to look at that stuff, get a little bit more interested. Every day would just learn something new.
Mhm.
And then pretty quickly I realized how dynamic of a space YouTube is and how it's such a cool, interesting space. And even in some ways, it's like its own economy at this point where YouTube is now supporting huge multi-billion dollar businesses for different creators. Creators are able to have their own studios and production companies on the range of, on the scale of like what they do in Hollywood, which is really cool. And yeah, I just, in some ways, it's also, it's super entrepreneurial. Like it's very much just like scrappy. You do what you can. You're running your own channel. You're only listening to yourself. You don't have to listen to other people like producers or investors or whatever. So yeah, I kind of quickly just realized how cool YouTube could be that like, it's such a cool opportunity where you can just kind of do whatever you want. But there's
Mhm.
also all this data that can guide you to decide what good opportunities and decisions are. So I'd say like I kind of only became familiar with YouTube only really like 4 years ago or so when I first started working for Nick. But really ever since then, it became like probably my number one passion.
Mhm.
And these days, all day, every day, I'm pretty much thinking about YouTube, and watching YouTube videos, understanding the platform more. I would definitely say at this point, I've probably put in my 10,000 hours. But it's been a really exciting ride and journey to just learn more about it. And I know I still have a lot more to go in learning about it.
Yeah. So, I mean, you mentioned when you started with Nick that he was, didn't have that many team members and was the smaller company. So, where exactly was Nick at his point when you
Hmm.
started helping him out? And then how did you help grow that? Because we, hear these different people where it's like the Beast production, they've got,
Yeah.
hundreds of people. But then there's other people like Ryan Trahan who keep it super small.
Yeah.
And so how big was he when you started and how did you kind of grow that business? And was there
Yeah.
a point where Nick was like, I don't want it that big. We're going to cap it here.
Yeah, totally. No, these are all great questions and all like really, I think you laid out well kind of the, what's the right word? just the dynamics of the YouTube space. How you can have these massive companies, these really
Mhm.
tight companies. I'd say we're definitely much closer to like a pretty small company. Ryan Trahan and his team are good friends of ours. I would say that we operate pretty similar to what they do, and I'll explain a bit more. Which is that to answer your question directly, when I first started, basically Nick's operation at the time when I first started was there was Nick, there was a camera guy. I think he had like a virtual remote editor who worked contract by, project by project on a contract basis. And he had an agent who was helping him with sponsorships and brand deals. And that was it. Basically, outside of like filming, someone else was doing for him, editing, someone else was doing for him, sponsorship, someone was helping him with. But really, day to day, everything else was Nick. Whether it was, coming up with ideas for videos or planning videos or having to figure out how to execute different sponsorships or even like literally posting videos, like pressing upload on videos. Everything was him. And beyond being the main talent for a channel, beyond like literally being in front of the camera, all that stuff, which is in its own way kind of a full time job. All of those things are also kind of their own full time jobs at the scale of a bigger channel. So I'd say Nick was just doing everything where at the time and as creators grow, you want to figure out how to like outsource things that are slightly less important to your day to
Mhm.
day and figure out how to really lock in on the things that are super important to the brand, like being on camera and being that face of your company. So yeah, again, at the time, it was really, really small and tight and like really just like at the bare necessity, at the bare minimum, I'd say that's like what a YouTuber's team looks like is like there's the YouTuber, there's the filmer, there's the editor, and then there's ideally someone who's helping to bring in the sponsorships. That's like level one, I'd say, for like you're a YouTuber. This is your
Mhm.
level one. Um, at that stage, what we needed as we were posting more content is we needed a full time editor. So I remember this was one of my first projects for Nick was our contractor editor just wasn't reliable enough or wasn't there was something there was something off. It wasn't working out for a long term thing as we were growing. So Nick needed a full time editor, and that was like the first example I'd say of like needing a more consistent, reliable team. Like he needed someone who could handle videos nonstop for him. So
Mhm.
that was one of my first projects was looking out for and hiring our first full time editor. And then yeah, it was again filling in all those kinds of things that at the time Nick was filling in, like the data and the research and the planning and the creative and everything, and talking to his agent sometimes and just doing everything. I was starting to kind of help as like I always like to say at the time, like being Nick's kind of second brain. So like Nick has his thoughts and I would be like the second source helping him like navigate everything. Um, and yeah, and then from there, it's been a slow growth of our team. Nick's vision for our team is still very lean and mean. Like he wants to, he feels like he performs best with just like a small dedicated team around him versus like a massive team like the Mr. Beast team where they have everything they could possibly ever need. They have a role for that. Today our team is about like 10 full-time people. And we're growing consistently. But we still want to keep that kind of small, like excited, hardworking focus with our team.
Yeah, no, definitely. So Nick's kind of, the YouTube Shorts, TikTok, Instagram Reel person. But how exactly, I guess multiple questions in one, because we see these different YouTube Shorts of Nick's like, I'm in Japan or something and we're going to test out these different snacks for a YouTube short. And then, but he also has these long form videos that perform well too. And so a lot of different creators say, oh, um, we've got the short form, but we can't convert it to the long form. So how exactly did you convert a short form audience to a long form audience as well? And then how exactly do you succeed in the shorts content creation space? Because we've all seen, the different revenues for YouTube shorts and TikTok and everything. And, but then obviously getting sponsorships, but how exactly do you make both of those work? Or how do you succeed in doing these shorts?
Yeah, um, definitely. So I would say that what I would say is I'm just trying to think of the best way to phrase it. In terms of your first question of like, how do you kind of maintain both a shorts and long form audience and how do you convert people back and forth? Um, I would say in some ways, we don't even necessarily think about it so much as like converting our short form audience to long form. I'd say we keep it even more simple and we just think, how can we make amazing short form content and amazing long form content? And by doing that, we're confident that the viewers will come. Like if we're making amazing content, again, on both platforms, that's that's really the most that we can do ourselves. Like we just want to make sure that people are seeing the highest quality stuff, the highest quality food content in this case. And if we're delivering on that, we feel very confident that we will develop those audiences. So in some ways, again, we don't really care so much about converting back and forth because we'd almost rather in some ways keep them separate. And the way that we know we're going to consistently have that audience is again by just focusing on making really, really great content for both platforms.
Mhm.
To your second question of uh, your second question was kind of like how do we monetize our content and make it work from a business perspective? Is that what your question was?
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, we've all seen the shorts ad revenue and everything. And, sometimes TikTok or Facebook even is better, but
Yeah, of
it's still not much. So how are
course.
you able to monetize the short form content where for a short you can travel to Japan and film
Yeah.
this video of testing out different snacks or whatever that may be?
Yeah. No, of course. That's another great question. You're totally right that short form content does not pay very well at all. Like even on the scale of Nick or like a Mr. Beast, there are times where you'll make where even if you get millions and tens of millions of views, you might only make like $1,000 on a short from the ad revenue. Or oftentimes much, much less. Oftentimes you might only make a couple $100, even if you're like a Nick channel or a really big channel. To your question of like, part of your question, and just for context for the listeners, there are times where we might make videos where as Elijah said, Nick might travel to Japan and try random convenience store snacks, and on the outside that might seem like a crazy use of money, where it's like, wow, Nick is really flying all the way to Japan, literally just going to a random convenience store. He's paying for flights, hotels, everything, all of his time, and he's going to make a couple $100. Like, how does that work? And the answer is kind of two pronged. One, when we do trips like this, we very strategically try to make sure that we're getting enough content where it is ROI positive to do these trips. For
Mhm.
example, like yes, while it'd be a net negative to go to Japan and make only one video on snacks, we'd probably lose money on that if we're making like $200 on the short. If we're doing 10 shorts like that, then that's where we start to see some ROI positivity, is by really making sure we get enough content to do this stuff. So whenever we do trips, we'll almost always try to balance both short form and long form content, again, just to maximize our ROI. And then to your other question, to kind of back to your earlier point of like, how does Nick really succeed on short form? I would say that what we found is that people really love these kind of like grand experiences that a lot of people don't get to have. For example, a lot of people don't get to in their daily lives just go to Japan and try snacks. So again, the, while it might seem kind of outlandish, that's almost the point, is that it's kind of outlandish, which in our view makes it just that much more viral and exciting to people. And again, kind of allows us to deliver more premium, high quality content if we're going for these super outlandish, like in some in some cases almost like stupid sounding ideas like flying to Japan for snacks.
Yeah. No. So as you've grown his channel and seen these different other YouTubers and how they grow their channels and everything, how would you recommend someone new to the platform grow their YouTube channel? What's some advice you would give to them? And then we see these different creators and they've got these sponsorships like Shopify and sometimes get millions of dollars from these sponsors. How, so when should someone, look for a sponsorship, or should they wait for the sponsor to come to them?
Yeah, of course. I would say for the first part of what's some advice for a new YouTuber, I would say that right now, the trend that we've seen over the last few years is that when you're comparing shorts or long form, it's still very much the case that that for discoverability of new channels, Shorts is very much, I would say, or I'll rephrase actually. So any YouTuber, any person, any team, you only have a limited amount of time to make content or do whatever. Like there's only so many hours in the day. Um, what we feel like with Shorts is that the ROI in terms of the time it takes to film and edit a short versus the amount of views you get, we find to be much, much higher for shorts versus long form. So what I would tell to new YouTubers is really focus on shorts to start out with. That's really where you're going to get the most discoverability and most reach. Of course, as we both know, it's not always the case that shorts are easier. Like you can spend 2 months on a short at times. We've spent tons of time on a short. I think a newer YouTuber might not be in that boat of wanting to or needing to spend so much time on a short. Um, but shorts are still a very, very powerful tool for reach and discoverability. That said, at the same time, I do think that understanding and cracking long form is something that's really important if you want to break from that like level one tier of YouTuber, like up into the bigger leagues. The reason is that shorts only channels, in terms of developing an audience, shorts are great for kind of getting people in, but they really don't allow you to like connect with your audience that deeply. So when it comes to when it comes to building your brand, quote unquote,
Mm-hmm.
long form is really, I'd say, where you build that brand, where you connect with your audience, where you engage with them, where you get to know them. Long form is really great for that. What I would say is like really start with shorts, start to really understand shorts. And then you really should also start to layer in long form at least somewhat early. So you're starting to build that audience. Um, that's kind of the content side of it. On the second thing I'd say is like, if you want to succeed at YouTube, you really need to be obsessed with YouTube. And what that means is like, it, frankly, just with YouTube, probably similar to if you want to be like a top athlete or a top singer or whatever, you need to spend almost 24/7 just thinking about YouTube. Like there is so much to learn on the platform. Even without looking at like hardcore backend data, there's so much to learn from people's thumbnails and people's titles and people's outlier videos and everything. And there's so many different platforms now, like ViewStats and 1 of 10, that allow you to kind of access backend data, even if you're not on somebody else's channel or team. So there's so much data to learn. And part of being a big YouTuber is really being, uh, really having really just being so hungry to grow and to learn as much as you can about YouTube. So I would say it's those two things. It's just like making content consistently and also being so hungry to learn all that you can about YouTube. And then to your second question about sponsorships and kind of when creators should start to seek out sponsorships, I would say that um, typically what I see is that most creators don't really start to see any kind of sponsorship until they hit like 10K subs or so. At the scale of like 10K subs, you might be getting like a couple $100 to do something here and there. Once you get to like 100K versus 10K, once you get to 100K subs, that's where you might start to see sponsorships that are in like the thousands of dollars range. You'll be a bit more attractive to sponsors as you kind of have this bigger audience. I would say for a new YouTuber, I would really say focus on the content more than the sponsorships. Like the content and the time you put into the content is what's going to help you grow your brand. Yes, sponsorships are amazing because you need money to grow your channel and grow your production company. But at the same time, I think some YouTubers might get too caught up in like that short term money and lose sight on just focusing on their videos, because the more you put into your videos, the more quote unquote long term money that you'll see when you put this value into your channel. So yeah, I would say that it's tough to sponsorships are a tough thing. It is helpful in our experience to have some kind of partner, either an agent or a manager who kind of is looking out for sponsorships for you. Just because it's like, again, when you're talking about full-time jobs of a YouTuber, looking for sponsorships is its own pretty much full-time job. So allowing yourself to outsource that, if that's not something you want to do, is really great. But yeah, I would say try not to get too caught up in the sponsorships and really still focus more on that content.
Yeah. So as you manage this, massive YouTube channel with this team and then, collaborated with all these other famous people like Matthew McConaughey and these massive, massive people. Um, what does a day-to-day life of managing this look like?
Yeah, people ask me this a lot, and my answer is always that my day to day is constantly changing,
Mhm.
which is exciting because I'm someone who's very. I am someone who likes to just do different things, try different things. I don't like to have the same daily routine every single day. So I really enjoy this kind of lifestyle, but it is in times very it can be very demanding based on how every day is totally different,
Mhm.
different problems every day, different solutions every day, everything like that. I would say on a typical day, probably about it might sound weird, but I often say this that about usually about like 3 to 4 hours of the day, I almost just try to be like I, for a couple hours of the day, I like to just think, and what that means is like it's tough to find pockets of my day where I don't have anything to do. Like I'm almost always on my computer from waking up to going to sleep or on my phone or something just because there's constantly stuff coming in. But a big part of my job is the strategy and creative behind what we do. And for that, a lot of it is just like thinking. Good ideas might come to you in the shower or on a walk or on a podcast or whatever. Good ideas can come to you whenever, and you kind of just need to be constantly thinking and working your brain a little bit for them to come to you. So that's a big part of my job is always like figuring out kind of our next big project, that we're coming up on. Um, I'd say a lot of my job is also just kind of facilitating and figuring out the next few projects that we're working on. For example, Nick's about to take a big trip to Asia for a bunch of content. So a lot of my day to day right now is kind of managing the day to day of that trip and figuring out the content that we're going to shoot and planning out how we're going to make that trip ROI positive based on what we talked about earlier. Um, a lot of my days are like emailing and calling with different brands, other creators, other teams, celebrity
Mhm.
teams, all that kind of stuff. As you mentioned, we do a lot of collaborations with other big celebrities and YouTubers. And part of my job is making those relationships and keeping those relationships. So there's a lot of outreach to these people and keeping up those relationships. Um, a lot of my day is also honestly just spending time scrolling YouTube. Like that's something that really kind of helps me stay looped into the trends that are going on is just checking out what's happening on YouTube. Um, and another big part of my day is just talking with Nick and our team. Like I'm kind of that point person who's kind of bouncing a little bit between everybody to make sure the business is moving forward. So I try to be there as a support for Nick as much as I possibly can. We probably get on like 2 or 3 phone calls a day, just talking about random things. And also I tend to be that point person for the rest of our team as I'm kind of like the day to day ideas person to a lot of people tend to funnel through me. And I'll help kind of, I try to help facilitate everybody else's day to day as well, just as their projects really depend on Nick's projects and our internal projects.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you mentioned that Nick is taking this big trip soon and everything. So, as they take these big trips, to different continents and everything and create content. Does the whole team fly out, or is it like a select number of people? We're going to send this person that can manage this and, this videographer and the camera.
Yeah, totally. So the answer to this kind of depends for different YouTubers and definitely depends for us. Some YouTubers and some teams like to travel with like 10 people because that's what they feel comfortable with sometimes is
Mhm.
like, you know, if they're very famous and well known, sometimes they like to have like a lot of their team around to make sure things are going to go smooth and be safe and everything. Nick's someone who when he films, he likes to film with as few distractions and people around him as possible. So typically, for the most part, when Nick is traveling, it will typically only be Nick and our camera guy. When it comes to more complicated shoots that require tons more details, tons more prep, tons more on the ground work, I'll also tend to go on some of these trips. I was with Nick at the end of last year in we went to Dubai and then India and then Ecuador, which was exciting. Those were all trips that were like very involved with things to do. This next trip where Nick will be in Asia will be a bit more sporadic and almost just like a lighter trip in terms of the things that are actually going to happen. So I won't be on that one, but typically I'd say the typical makeup, the minimum makeup is like Nick and a camera guy. The next makeup up is like Nick, a camera guy, and like a planner slash facilitator. And for our team, that's me as like the planner slash facilitator.
Yeah, awesome. So as these, different things have come in and different sponsorships, different collabs, different trips, what have been some of your favorite moments while working with Nick? Whether it's this trip you took or this collab you got to help with or the sponsorship?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that a few moments come to mind. One is that I've been very directly involved in our Guinness World Records. That's a trend of content that we've done really since the beginning of our channels. Um, for a while, we worked with someone named Cooking with Linja, or just Linja, who we did a lot of world records with. She was kind of known as like they called her the internet's grandma, and she was this small Asian lady who was in her 60s, super different from Nick on paper, but she was also a food content creator. Her and Nick got along super well. And they started this series where they would break Guinness World Records together. Um, the Guinness World Records with Linja were some of my favorite days of my whole job. Those were just really exciting. Where a Guinness World Record, I think to some people sounds like a PR stunt that's like, easy. You just set it up and do it. But
Mm-hmm.
they're challenges, and they're like honestly kind of they're basically competitions, where you have a finite amount of time to do something that's never been done before because you're about to break a Guinness World Record. And almost always they're like crazy, crazy things that you're asked to do. Like make a 50-pound chicken nugget or a 3,000-pound sushi roll or something that again has just never been done before. So you kind of do all your planning, but you don't really know if it's going to work out until the day of. So it's like, it's this really unique frenzy of just, of unique problems that you're solving, to make these big food items.
Mm-hmm.
And when we did them with Linja, it was just so fun to do them with her and her son, Tim. It was such a great way for our team and Linja to get to know each other and become friends. Sadly, Linja passed away at the beginning of 2024. Um, in her honor, we've done a couple other Guinness World Records to kind of carry on that legacy, which have still been super fun, but definitely don't feel the same without Linja being there. So I would say the Guinness World Records are a really fun, exciting part of my job. Um, I really enjoy getting to work with other talent, whether it's YouTubers or celebrities. Um, Maybe not for the reason that some might expect. Like personally, I don't care so much about meeting a celebrity just to meet them and say I've met them. What I find more exciting is like, to me, what's exciting is when someone like Matthew McConaughey or Tom Brady, when they're excited to work with Nick DiGiovanni, that makes me super excited. Like it's almost kind of crazy when you say it out loud that some of these like massive all-time biggest celebrities ever want to work with a YouTuber, a food YouTuber, Nick in this case. Um, it's just amazing that our reach is in a place where we can get to work with people like this. These are some of the most successful people in the world of all time. So to get to partner with them and do fun videos is really exciting. Those are really fun days. Um, Traveling and getting to see different places and food experiences that again, a lot of people don't get to do. That's also really exciting. And the last thing I'd say that always just gets me excited is like whenever a fan comes up to Nick on the street and just says how much they love our channels and our videos and they want a picture with Nick. That's also something I love. That to me never gets old. I'm constantly just amazed when I see, especially when we're in a random country like India. It's amazing that me living in New York, doing my job on my computer, my work can reach someone totally random in the world, someone I never even knew existed. So it's always fun to see kind of our fans and to get there and to see how excited they are when they see Nick in the world. So yeah, I'd say those are some of my favorite parts of the job.
Yeah. So, I mean, you mentioned Linja, and you said she was kind of the grandmother of the internet, and Nick was super close to her and everything. So, how did that story kind of come about of them meeting? Because, I mean, when she passed away, Nick made these videos and had all these memories of her. So, what was that kind of like?
Yeah, totally. Nick and Linda had a really special relationship. What happened was, I think it was maybe late 2020 when they first got connected. Linda was someone who became very, very viral and famous very quickly. So what we know now, and Nick didn't know this at the time, but what we know now is that her and her son Tim were making videos together in their kitchen during COVID. They needed to pass the time. Her son was an editor and filmer. He just wanted something to do with his mom. He thought this was silly. He had nothing else to do. He had just lost his job. So they started making these videos together. And then in a few months, they just massively took off. Like they started to get all these views. And what was really exciting about them was it was like such a Gen Z approach to these videos where they were like talking about me. It was very much, these videos involved a lot of memes and funny things and pop culture and crazy things. But it was this like older lady who was doing this stuff. This older lady who had so much personality and charisma. But she looked like a grandma, but she talked like a teenager, basically. So it was this really funny dichotomy where she became very viral. She was doing food videos. Nick, again, like early 2020, reached out. He sent Linja a DM at the time to her Instagram account. He thought that, again, at the time, we didn't know anything about her son and how she made the videos. So we thought it was just Linja doing everything. What we learned pretty quickly is that Linja's son, Tim, again, the guy who filmed and edited her videos, he ran the show. Like he managed the accounts. He did everything. He produced the videos. He told his mom what to say. So when Nick sent Linja a DM, he thought he was talking to Linja. Really, he was talking to Tim, her son, because he was the one managing the accounts. Quickly, Nick and Tim got on the phone. They realized they're both basically they were the same age. They do the same kind of job. They both work in food, social media. They started to become friends, and then we started to do a few collaborations with Linja. She lived in New Jersey at the time. Nick lived in Boston, so it was a pretty easy back and forth commute to get there.
Mhm.
And we started making these videos, and then we started doing a few small things. And then really the first big thing we did was the first Guinness World Record, which was the cake pop Guinness World Record. And then the relationship in these videos kind of just kept spinning out from there into something really, really huge and amazing.
Yeah, so a lot of people nowadays are, questioning, will YouTube overtake, streaming platforms like Netflix and Hulu? And so what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I would say YouTube has already taken over all these streaming platforms. And really it's like a data thing. If you look at, it's called the Nielsen report. That's like the most famous popular, report on TV, internet streaming numbers. What this report has shown, I think now it might be almost 2 years, and every month they release this report. So they say like what the most popular thing is, what the most popular platforms were that month. Every month for almost the past 2 years now, YouTube has been the most popular number one streaming platform by watch hours. Um, Number two, I believe, is Disney. Number three, I think, is Netflix. But YouTube is already the number one streamer, period, right now. Of course, when it comes to streaming, it's a bit of an age thing. So like people like our parents aren't really watching YouTube. It isn't really in their demographic yet. Um, if you were to, these numbers from the Nielsen rating reflect all demographics. If you were to look at older demographics again, you'll probably start to see places like Netflix be slightly above YouTube. What I would say is for our generation and below, like for young people, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, YouTube is already by far number one. And as YouTube grows and as the content pool grows on there, as creators get better, as channels get bigger, I think it's only going to grow into older generations as well. And yeah, it's becoming so huge. And on some levels, I think just to make it simple, what I think YouTube has as an advantage over everyone else is that it's free. Like YouTube content is free to everybody. You could pay to have ads reduced, sure. But it's, as far as I know, it's the only platform that's free that offers content of its quality. Even on Netflix, like, of course, you're paying a monthly fee. You are, it's its own thing where YouTube is totally free. Um, because of their business model, they have more content period than any other platform out there because anyone can upload stuff. So like whether you want to watch Mr. Beast videos, whether you want to watch finance videos, whether you want to watch cooking videos, anything is just on YouTube. Like there's truly something for everybody on YouTube. And that's not the case for the other platforms. So I would say YouTube is already bigger than everything else. And it's only that gap is only going to get bigger and bigger. And what I would say is YouTube is the present and YouTube is the future. It's massive and it's only getting bigger.
Yeah, so I want to discuss a bit of, you know, how Nick has, elevated and expanded his brand. But first I'm curious on your thoughts because you mentioned earlier that in order to succeed on YouTube, you believe that you have to be obsessed with YouTube and kind of 24/7 in a way. But a lot of people say nowadays is that, all these younger kids are just, you know, glued to their phones, and that if you stare at a screen all day, it affects your your health and your sleep cycle and everything. And so what what are your thoughts on that as you're like, in order to succeed on YouTube, you need to, be obsessed with YouTube, but then at the same time, we've got these different reports of people being stuck on their phones, younger generation, and it's ruining health and sleep cycles and everything.
Yeah, totally. No, it's a great question. It's something that I think everyone in the social media space needs to be very mindful of. What I would say is that social media is inherently kind of a tricky thing. There are pros and cons of social media. I think a lot of people know what those pros and cons are. Um, what I would say is that as creators, I feel like I'm trying to think of the best way to say this, but as creators, I feel like there's different kinds of content you can make. You can make content that people call brain rot now, which is just like literally AI slop. It means
Mhm.
nothing. It's stupid, but it's mindless and something's interesting about it. Or you can make really educational videos. Like you can make videos on tech or finance or cooking that are like no brain rot, only
Mhm.
just education and impactful. And then there's a whole range in between. Where you'd put Mr. Beast is up to you or up to anybody. I would say that the more like what I feel like with our content at least is that I feel like our content is making a very positive difference in the world.
Mhm.
I feel like we're teaching people how to cook. We're getting people more excited about food. We're trying to maintain this very positive, family friendly brand, and all those things have several positive effects. Like knowing more about food means that food is like a way to connect with family and friends. So it's learning more about food can allow you to connect with other people. It can allow you to live a healthier lifestyle and to understand more about
Mhm.
what you're putting in your body. And I feel like our content does a good job of being positive and making that difference. Again, there's other creators who I would say are probably more harmful, like people who are being negative or people who are creating false stereotypes or depictions of different groups. Like there's all sorts of creators out there. I think that in an ideal world, all creators are acting very morally and making like very high quality content.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's all we can do. Like we can't control how much people are watching these videos or what their habits are. But I feel like as long as we're making content that makes a positive difference in their minds, um, we're doing our part to make healthy content, and hopefully people are on top of that using healthy habits to consume that content.
Yeah. So Nick's got these, different portions of his business. He's got the main channel and then just recently started up Nick's Kitchen, and then he's got Osmo and everything. So what are y'all doing right now to expand the brand?
I would say to expand the brand. So every day we're kind of expanding the brand. To your point, we have different kinds of businesses. So we have how I would break it down currently is on the content side. On the content side, we currently have two main content verticals that we looked at. One is our main channel. So that's like the at Nick DiGiovanni channel. What we call that is food entertainment. So that's like things like Nick traveling, Nick cooking for celebrities, Nick cooking with robots. Like that's like food entertainment that lives on our main channel. We also have what's called Nick's Kitchen now. And that's our attempt at doing like a classic Food Network recipe style uh, show where it's no fluff and flash, it's no robots, it's no celebrities, it's only cooking. And basically between those two channels, we're establishing Nick as kind of this culinary host on the main channel, and also this like really acclaimed chef on Nick's Kitchen, and chef and teacher on Nick's Kitchen. Nick's Kitchen is something new. We only started it this year in 2025. So that's been a really exciting project for us. We've posted long form videos every week. We're doing shorts now. That we're hoping to make into a huge culinary education arm. Outside of content, as you said, we have a brand called Osmo Salt. That's a salt and seasoning brand. That's something that we launched in Walmart last year. We're going to do a huge relaunch in Walmart again this year. We're trying to grow our brand through like CPG stuff that way. The reason for that is that we've always felt like one thing we've always said internally is like through the videos, you can't obviously taste Nick's food. You can't
Hmm.
smell, you can't taste. You could watch and you could see what he's doing, but you have no idea what the stuff tastes or smells like. So doing a brand like Osmo or just a physical food product is a way that finally fans can actually taste and experience something that Nick put his hands on and Nick developed. Beyond that, we have a best-selling cookbook we released a few years ago. And in the future, I would say as we're building out these things, just the sky's the limit with what else we can do. Like, whether it's restaurants or classic TV shows or whatever, we feel like there's still so much more opportunity to grow and build our audience.
Hmm.
But yeah, I would say this is what present day looks like. And we're confident it's just going to keep growing and growing.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you mentioned Nick's Kitchen and how it's more of not so more of like flashy entertainment style, but more of an education style. Here's him cooking, and that's all you're going to get. You're not going to get these different robots or these different celebrities and everything.
Yep,
Um, and,
exactly.
and so as you're growing this, is there any um, is there any thought maybe in the future of, hey, we're going to bring on a second host, or is it strictly just going to be, this is Nick's Kitchen, Nick's your only host, you're going to have him until that channel dies?
Yeah, no, that's another great question. I would say probably inevitably, we would look to bring in other talent into the channel. It's something we've already done, maybe without people realizing, is like almost every video now is some kind of collab. The most
Mhm.
recent video at the time of this conversation is a video on our channel where Nick tastes 100 years of McDonald's with another creator named Max the Meat Guy. And we very frequently do collabs with other creators, whether it's people like Mr. Beast, Mark Rober, food creators, all kinds of people. So those people are already a big part of the channel. We see collaborations and bringing other people into Nick's world is a very important part of our content because it allows Nick to have a dialogue with someone else and a banter and a chemistry that you don't really get when you're alone. Um, Additionally, Nick is only one person. Like there's only one Nick. He's, his time is getting more spread thin as our channels grow. So we definitely do think that eventually it might be worthwhile to bring in someone more directly into our ecosystem as
Mhm.
a more permanent face. Um, an example I'll use is kind of like First We Feast with Hot Ones. Like when you think of most people might not even know actually that Hot Ones is like owned by a parent company called First We Feast. Um, First We Feast has Hot Ones as like their main thing. And of course, Sean Evans is the main talent for Hot Ones. So when you think of First We Feast or Hot Ones, you're probably only thinking of Sean Evans plus the celebrities he brings onto the show. What most people also might not know is that once they built out that Sean Evans whole empire, now First We Feast has several other different content verticals and niches on their channel. So they have several different hosts now, several different people.
Mhm.
Binging with Babish is someone who's also done something like this. And really it's a model, I'd say that again, it is something that happens to most creators just as they get bigger, where there's only one of them. You can't clone them. Their time gets spread more thin. So really the best you can do is bring in someone else to consistently supply more content.
Yeah, so I guess how would you go about that? Because I think it was Binging with Babish where I heard that, yeah, we can bring on a second creator and a second talent, but people still want, you know, that other talent. And we can't necessarily, we're not trying to replace this other talent, but people don't maybe watch the videos because, oh, it's not, Nick anymore. It's this other person that I'm not
Totally.
necessarily interested in.
Yeah. I mean, I guess what I would say is we'd want to make sure in that case that we find someone like that, we want to make sure that they fit within our brand. So obviously there's only one Nick. We wouldn't want someone to come in and pretend to be Nick and, dress like him, act like him. There's only one Nick and we can never clone Nick. At the same time, there's, I'd say, a style of Nick and a style of our channels that we're very confident of. Like, we know we want our channels to be very positive. We want them to be very food focused. We want them to be family friendly. We want them to be very lighthearted and sometimes comical. Like, there's kind of maybe a profile of a type of person that I know our audience would relate to. And the goal would be, again, to bring them into our ecosystem and build them up as their own personality. Like, again, when people want to watch Nick, they want to watch Nick. When people want to watch a Nick style video, that's where someone else could come in and where we could start to build up this other personality who could spin off into their own thing, and deliver similar things to Nick. But again, they're not going to be Nick at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, definitely. So as you've seen all these different trends and social media things, and the rise of AI, how are you incorporating AI, and do you think that that's going to be a big part eventually?
Yeah, totally. I would say that probably every content creator team and also just every business at large at this point is probably doing something with AI.
Mhm.
Um, what we use AI for is maybe different than what people might expect creators use AI for. What we found so far in 2025, at least, there's infinite room for AI to grow and get better. Right now, at this point in time, AI for us is not very helpful with creative ideas. So we're not using it to outsource ideas, thumbnails, titles. Like, we're not really using it to kind of, um, we're not using it to like dump ideas in there and they figure it out and they run the channel. Like, very much, Nick and our team are still running the channel for what we do. AI is really just a supplement to what we do. So when it comes to like a script, like, let's say we have a rough script for a new video. Let's say it was the McDonald's video last time. At times we might give AI a rough version of our script and ask
Mhm.
what they think of it, how they would improve it, how they would make it more clear. So we really kind of use AI as like an extra, maybe like kind of a production assistant is what you might call it. Like someone who can just, a tool that we can use to make things clearer, make things better. Ask about when we're planning a trip. It's a resource we use to find different places we might want to film at, for example. Or it's also a research tool. So like for the McDonald's video, we used it to help determine what the different McDonald's items were from every decade that we ended up featuring. Of course, I think as most people know, AI is not perfect yet in its information, and sometimes it just makes up
Mhm.
stuff. So you do have to, especially for a channel at our scale, we don't want to lie to our audience, and you do kind of have to do your extra background research to make sure things are accurate. But AI has been a really powerful thing for us for research, for script writing, even like sending emails. I use it a lot to just make my emails more polished. And then on top of that, one thing that I can't even really speak to because it's so new. But one thing that's become really popular on Twitter the last few weeks is, um, OpenAI released their new ChatGPT 4.0 model to the public. And one thing that this model can do is it has really, really advanced image generation.
Mhm.
So now, you can't really use it yet to make a thumbnail from scratch, but you can use it to really elevate your thumbnails and make certain parts better. So that's I'd say like the next frontier in the next few months. What creators are going to really figure out is how to use it for thumbnail generation, or sorry, not thumbnail generation, but thumbnail support. But yeah, AI is extremely helpful as like an extra resource, but it's not yet able to do the creative work. Still, that needs to be Nick's brain and our team's brain to carry out the Nick
Yeah.
vision.
Hmm. So as you've seen these different things, what are maybe some of the core values and core ideas that you have when searching for and looking at different sponsorships or collabs?
Yeah, I would say that we look for everything to be pretty. We look for things to be aligned with our brand. So at
Hmm.
this point, as a lot of people might expect, and as you can tell from this interview, we we're a pretty family friendly brand. So as you can just, it's not even something I need to say, but it's something that you can just tell from our videos now. Nick really rarely ever curses. He doesn't talk about like adult topics. We don't really show alcohol in our videos. We never do gambling, anything that's like kind of adult and mature content. We just try to stay away from it because we
Hmm.
want our videos to be watchable for anyone from a young kid to a grandparent. So we look for brands and collaborators that are aligned with us. So, Nick's used this example before, but we've turned down a massive we've turned down several massive opportunities and deals from companies like gambling companies, alcohol companies, stuff like that. And on paper, they were fantastic deals that some people would advise us to take. But we'll pass on anything that, again, just does not align with our values and our content. So anything like that, it really doesn't matter. We will tend to pass. What Nick always says is it almost as like it's a joke, but also not a joke. Nick says that he doesn't want his mom to call him up one day and yell at him for taking a weird sponsorship. Like his mom watches the videos.
Mm-hmm.
She has a very family friendly mindset. He doesn't want to piss his mom off, but that's really just an example of not wanting to piss off several other people in the world who would think what he was doing is kind of foolish for his brand. When it comes to collaborators, it's very similar. So I'm sure you can imagine there's so many different kinds of personalities and people out there, whether it's like celebrities or streamers or creators. Um, they all differ in what they care about. Like some people might, you know, show alcohol in every video and be drinking nonstop and partying and whatever. Like that might be their style of content or their personality. That's just not really something that we do or we really relate to that much with our content. So we really look for other collaborators who are just kind of more aligned with us on like fun, family friendly stuff that is really exciting. Um, and yeah, and it also might sound silly, but we also look for people who are excited about food.
Mm.
Food is such a wide topic where uh, so many people have different relationships with food, whether they love to cook, whether they hate to cook. Maybe they love eating. Maybe they don't even care about food. Maybe they just like eat as a sustenance and they don't care about anything. Um, the most fun collaborations we do are with people who love food and really kind of are
Mm-hmm.
excited to do something with Nick.
Yeah. And I mean, you even mentioned of kind of finding values that align with the channel. So you've turned down massive, alcohol brand deals or sponsorships or gambling ones. And it's good to hear that because, some creators are just so sucked into the money where they're like, yeah, maybe I wouldn't do this, but they're offering me $2 million. Like, I'm going to take
Exactly.
it.
Totally. And it's tricky. And honestly, we've always been in a fortunate position where we're able to think more with our heads and our guts more so
Mm-hmm.
than needing to follow money. The reason is that like our channels, we've done things in such a way where our channels are successful enough and sustainable enough where, whether it's, whether it's for any brand deal, there's we almost never need to do things for the money is how I'd put it. Like we've built up our audience and our channels and our content style in such a way that we don't need to follow the money directly.
Mm-hmm.
We're again more focused on the long-term value than short-term value. It's totally understandable also that like if you're a creator who's not making that much money and maybe you have a big team that you can't really afford and you need to pay salaries, you need to pay people's healthcare, whatever, like sometimes you need to take the brand deal and whether it's good for your brand or not, you're just going to go bankrupt or lose everything if you don't do it. And that's
Mm-hmm.
totally understandable. And a lot of people I think are in that position. We've luckily been in a position where we've tried to navigate things more carefully, where again, we hope to never put ourselves in a position that we need to do something for money. So we can always think more with our heads before we do something.
Yeah. And so you mentioned earlier in this interview of how you kind of manage the day to day and stay in touch with the videographers and editors and Nick and everything. So what does kind of the process of making a video look like? You come up with the idea, but then what does the process of that look like?
So yeah, our creative process for videos, at this point, we have a process down that really works for us. What that process is it generally starts with me and Nick just throwing ideas against each other. So we'll throw out ideas that we think are good and kind of when we have these conversations, the goal is just to tear apart as many ideas as possible. The reason is that we at this point want to be very scrutinous with our ideas to the point that we're only putting forward ideas that we're so confident are going to be massive viral outliers in our channel. So we are very strict with each other on what we like. And I'd say Nick and I both have a mind for this stuff where we together, when we put our heads together, we can both evaluate. We can tell you why an idea will work well or why an idea won't work well. And when we put our heads together, we just can do this stuff very quickly. So what will usually happen is like Nick and I will probably each independently do like a brainstorming session of sorts. We'll come together, do a joint brainstorming session, figure out what those ideas are that we like, that we don't like. Once we figure out ideas that we like, generally then it's kind of off to the races to produce and make that video. So, in the example of like the McDonald's video, what happened was we came together. We said we want to make this video on 100 years of McDonald's. At that point, it was me taking the lead on producing the video. So, whether it comes down to things like ordering props, planning scripts, hiring our camera crew, hiring different chefs and food stylists who help us make these videos and make the food look good. We need at this point for our videos, they can be very complicated where we need several people involved. I'm usually the one who takes the lead on executing that stuff. All the while Nick is kind of assisting me in making sure he's aligned with the creative vision at every step in the process. And then we get to shooting a video. So we've done all the work to produce it, pre-production. We get to shoot the video. At this point, there should be no unknowns by the time we shoot a video. So we've done all the planning we can. We get to set. We're very confident with what's going to happen. We're excited about the video. We shoot the video. Then we send it off to our editors. Typically with our videos at this point, they're so large and they're so complex that they might take even like a month to 2 months to edit these videos. So our editors will edit the video. When they're ready to send us the first draft, Nick and I will leave notes. We'll typically go through like 4 or 5 rounds of notes on a video until we feel like it's ready to post. And then we'll post the video, get it out there, and it's good to go.
Awesome. So where can people find out more about you, Nick, the whole brand, and any final closing remarks or thoughts?
Yeah, totally. I'd say like number one is check out our YouTube channel if you haven't already. Our main YouTube channel, which is at Nick DiGiovanni on YouTube. That's kind of our main number one place where we're putting out our highest quality, most premium content. Nick's Kitchen is probably the secondary resource where we are doing this kind of food education style content. So if you want to learn about recipes, we're hoping for that to be the best place on the internet to learn about recipes and make high quality recipes is what we want for Nick's Kitchen. When it comes to me and learning more about me, there is kind of this trend similar to this interview. There's kind of this trend of people wanting to learn more about the behind the scenes of YouTubers. You can check me out on LinkedIn. I post, I'd say like once every couple weeks with some kind of insight I have about YouTube or behind the scenes look at something. On Instagram, I post a bunch of stuff too. I'm at Zach Blank on every platform. Twitter, I post a bunch of stuff as well with behind the scenes. But yeah, again, at Zach Blank on every platform. I try to post as much behind the scenes stuff as I can. And, yeah, I'm just, again, I'm so excited about YouTube that I'm just so eager to share it with other people and hopefully share what I know to the next generation and have even more amazing YouTubers come up from the ground who are inspired by what we do.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. I know I enjoyed the conversation and I hope it's a blessing to other people.
Yeah, likewise, Elijah. Thank you so much for having me. Feel free to reach out any other time. And yeah, excited to keep building on YouTube and hopefully inspiring more people.
Yeah, absolutely.